Okay, so this week's vlog is going to be a little more educational, sort of targeted for first-time land investors who don't exactly know what to expect. So I get the same question over and over, so I thought it'd be a good time to kind of visualize it. And that question is, what sort of return can I expect on land in Illinois? So just had this conversation today. A guy called me from Georgia, heard the podcast, was kind of unfamiliar with Illinois, and his question was, well, what can I expect to get on a return? And there's no great answer for that, but there's some relationships and some trends that seem to hold true. So just thought I'd throw it down on a little graph to give you guys a little better understanding of it. But also remember, when I say return, I'm not talking about appreciation. I'm talking about when you buy it, what sort of coupon are you going to get back? Like essentially like a dividend on stock. If I buy a property for 100 grand, how much income am I going to get from that property? So what's that number? What's that percentage that I can expect? And the relationship is pretty much as follows. So because there's all sorts of farm ground in Illinois, from the best of the best, 145 productivity index, all the way down to reclaimed strip mine stuff that's, the bottom of the bottom. I think it's like 80 PI or something like that. So that relationship typically goes like this. So on this bar chart, if this is the return, and let's say, 6% for 2, 0, okay? And on this line, we're talking about quality of soil. So on one end, we're gonna have the best of the best, which is, we'll call it A+, which is, 140, we'll call it 135 productivity index plus. On the other side, we're going to have, we'll call this an F, and this would be 80 or so productivity index, which is strip mine soil. And again, I'm saying F, it makes it sound awful. We're still talking about Illinois land. It's all good. Strip mine soil in Illinois is better than most of the stuff in the world. So it sounds like F is a bad deal. It's not. There has to be a benchmark somewhere. So, we'll have C right in the middle. So the first question is, if a guy is looking to just invest in agricultural, not talking about recreational value at all, is you need to figure out where you want to land in this, because there's different returns, expected returns across the board. So for example, on an A+ farm, you might be looking at, these aren't exact, but just for ballpark for this exercise, let's say it's 2.5 or so, okay? But here's what happens. As the soil gets worse, we've seen that return actually grows. And so here's why. By the time you get strip mine soils, I've seen people get 5% returns, even better. And I'm just not talking hunting leases, I'm just talking farm income. So the reason that is because this topsoil stuff here, the cash rents come down recently, and let's say it's $300 an acre on good stuff, which I've seen people have more than that, but let's say it is, or so you're at if you buy it for 10 grand an acre, which is maybe a little lower than average, you're looking at a 3% return out of the gate. You back off some taxes and stuff like that, and you get down to that 2.5% range, okay? But as the quality of the soil decreases, the cash rent doesn't drop off at the same rate. So on this stuff that you could maybe get for, let's say $5,000 an acre, this stuff you might be able to get, $200 an acre rent. So, and if you find a little better buy than that, you're at a 4%, you can climb to a 5% with a few hunting leases. So that might be a little extreme, but you get the point of the exercise. As the quality goes down, there's not as many buyers. So let me explain this too. So another thing to think about when you're trying to pick your position is liquidity. And when I refer to liquidity, I mean how quickly can we move a farm for full value, which is an important factor when you're talking about investing, because a lot of things happen, they shuffle around. You may need to move some money. You may get another opportunity to buy a farm, buy another one. So it's an important factor to consider. So here's how that works on this soil, on this setup. The nicer the soil, the easier it is to move. So, Now we're kind of crossing paths here, crossing graphs, but that liquidity goes like this. So this is the liquidity line. So these farms, these A+ farms, in this range, and actually it actually dips right there. It actually goes like that and then this. Because what happens when you get to this, A farms are better. This is where your institutional buyers live. This is where your, huge investors, and they're focused on the best dirt in the world. When a fund matures, they want to be able to get full value. So it's very important to them that they are as liquid as possible. And an A+ farm in Illinois, like, it is almost cash. Like, you could have an auction tomorrow and get full value. So that's why there's just so many more buyers here, that the further you go towards quality soil, the easier it is to move it. Again, it's still land. So this stuff over here, that could take 6 to 12 months to find a buyer that's willing to do that, to pay full value. It's just the way that works. So you need to figure out your kind of risk level. Where most of my stuff is at these days is this level over. That's primarily because a lot of the recreational benefits are on this side, which I'll show you in a minute. But also you can find better buys over here a lot of the time because, either people don't want them because they're not perfect, or they're, a rough farm that you can do a little work to. And we have that equipment. So most of my stuff is here. So it looks like an F is bad. Don't write this stuff off, because there's some good buys to be had over here. But it's a personal decision. And, over here is the Googles and the Amazons of the world. Over here is, up and coming startups. So it's just kind of your risk level. If you want to be in the middle, you find some sea ground, some timber soil, you get a little better return. It's not quite as liquid, but it just depends on your comfort level. So that's this kind of the sliding scale. If you want the best of the best, 2.5 is normal now. You can find some that are up to 3, 4% to 5%. Even I've seen as high as 6 on a few on this end, but it's entirely a comfort level thing. But here's another thing that comes up, because inevitably when people do this, like, well, could I hunt on it, or could I, what could I do? And that is a very similar scale here. But what happens is, let me find my eraser. So let's say we get rid of this stuff and replace a few of these things, okay? So let's make this bottom graph, let's call it recreational value. Okay, so start 0% all the way to 100%. So 0% would be 100% farmland. Literally, you buy it and forget about it. On the other end, 100%, that'd be like a pure timber tract. You're buying to shoot a trophy deer and that's it. So return is use the same thing on this side. What happens is it starts in here, let's say 3% as an average here. Again, that's not exact depending on what type of land you buy, but let's say it's 3. Well, that goes this way. And actually, by the time it gets to 100%, it's actually out of pocket expenses. If you buy a 40-acre tract of timber, there's no income unless you're going to cut trees, which we don't get too much into. You have annual taxes, you have a few things you like to do to improve the property. So this is literally out of pocket. So when you're talking, I'd like to invest in some land. Today, for example, the guy, he's like, I'd like to be able to go deer hunt there, once or twice a year. I don't need a ton of deer hunting. So figure out where you are in that range. So, me personally, I don't like deer hunting enough to be on this side where my money's not working for me. It doesn't mean it's the wrong choice. It just means, like, personally where I'm at, I need my money to be working for me. So I'm closer to this way. Okay. So, I like some recreational value. I live here, I like to duck hunt, fish, that stuff. So, half is a very popular spot. It's like, man, I'd like to be right in the middle. I'd like to have half tillable and then half, whether it's water or timber or whatever it is. And so, your return might be 1% on that stuff, which is fine as long as you know that. But you have to consider both graphs. I should say one thing. There's a few spikes in here, and that's just kind of like you need to talk to somebody local because it's different in each market. Like, for example, this recreational value, there could be a few spikes here. There's a spike here, and it's like, well, what are these spikes? One might be a hunt club, okay? And you can get 3 or 4% on a hunt club. You're giving up a lot of the recreational rights to members, but there's still some recreational value. We own Double Cluck out in Canton, and it's a nice returning farm. We give up a bunch of the benefits because we are willing to let members pay to go out there, but we still get to use it. I take my son out there, so there's other things to consider besides just this. Another one that's at least happens here locally is waterfowl areas. If you're in the flight path and you can find a tillable farm, 100% tillable, a lot of times you can waterfowl hunt there, so you're still getting the income that you would on a straight ag farm, but you can add in, you can throw a goose pit in there and hunt 4 or 5 times a year, so you have some added recreational value on top of a pure ag farm. So I know it's a lot to consider, but just to kind of give you an idea of how it works. So, or you could lease that out and make some extra money. But these are the charts you need to figure out. So on the scale of quality of soil and risk level, decide where you are on that stuff. If it's important that you're able to move your money quickly, you might have to take a little less return just to get by the good stuff. Okay, and there's a ton more buyers on that good stuff, so you're not going to find any special deals. But again, you're talking Illinois black dirt, so it's a great investment. On the other end, if you want recreational values, you have to decide where you're at on this scale. Is recreational values the most important to you, and you don't care if you get a return? You're retired, you have everything in place, and you just want 40 acres to hunt. Totally fine. You're on this side. You want mostly recreational, but you don't want any money out of pocket, so you want enough to cover your taxes and a few, projects every year. You could be a 75% guy. The guy today is like, I only want to hunt once or twice a year. I want it mostly tillable. So he's going to look for a farm that's, in that 75% range where he buys 40 acres, 38 acres is tillable. He's got 10 acres of timber to hunt 2 or 3 times a year, but at least it's returning a little better. If he's 10%, now he's at a 2% mark. So those are the two kind of relationship graphs that I think, at least when I'm buying, that I keep in mind. And I try to talk people kind of visually through thinking this through before we start targeting properties, because without it, it's sort of hard to know what to look for. So when you're originally getting into land investing, figure out your risk comfort level, what you want that return in relationship to how nice the soil is. And second of all, if you want any recreational values, figure out how important that is to you in relationship to what return you want. What are you willing to give up to make that happen? So that is it for this vlog. Not a super exciting one, but very educational for people who are actually getting into it. So important stuff. If you guys have any questions, and again, this stuff changes. This is the case this year. It was actually the case last year as well, but you get back into pre-2008 and it was different. So it's important to be in touch with someone that you trust to kind of guide you through this stuff. But this theory holds true for the most part across the board. So if you're interested in getting into land investing and have some questions, hit us up. We'll be glad to help you out. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and we'll be back at you guys shortly with another one.